everyone, this is Air, and welcome to the 45th episode of Death Row Executions. Today's story is on Karl Eugene Chamberlain, who was executed in the state of Texas for murdering his neighbor. Karl Eugene Chamberlain was born on June 20th, 1970, in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He was the eldest of 9 siblings and stayed with his mother, Muwina Arthur, in New Mexico for a majority of his younger years. His parents split, and Karl ended up moving to Texas in 1985 at the age of 15 with his father, Edward Meeks, stepmother, Marcia Meeks, and stepsister, Jennifer Whitney. The moment he moved in with his father's family, they noticed things were not normal. Although he excelled in school and took advanced placement classes in math and physics, he was a habitual liar and a thief. Edward and Marcia felt the need to hover over him because of this, but it was of no use. He was caught stealing $50 from a family friend and would steal money and jewelry from his stepmother's room no matter how hard she tried to hide her valuables. Because of his stealing, the family would keep things locked up, but that did not stop Karl from breaking into the garage and stealing Marcia's vehicle on one occasion. His parents said that no matter how guilty Karl was, he would always deny being the guilty party. If he was ever caught in the act of stealing, he would cry and be over-emotional, so Marcia later testified that whenever he showed remorse or was apologetic, they felt it was all an act and no longer believable. He was also able to cry on demand, so she felt his tears were fake as well. A couple of years later, while still in high school at Plano East High School, he was convicted and put on probation for theft. He also began to have uncontrollable sexual desires. He once broke into a pornography store to steal sex tapes, and when he noticed an inflatable sex doll in the shop, he stole that as well. A neighbor testified at a later date that his wife was into sewing and used a mannequin for her projects. One day, someone broke into their garage and stole that mannequin. With the mannequin now in Karl's possession, he destroyed the face and then cut out the breast and crotch area. When he had no more use for the mannequin, he placed it in his neighbor's trash bin. His stepsister Jennifer said that he would also break into her room when she was not home, and she always felt uncomfortable and found his behavior to be off. One day, while searching Karl's room for some of her stolen belongings, she found her mother's underwear wrapped around a whisk, and when she opened his closet, she noticed the sex doll and mannequin in his closet with the crotch areas cut out. His behavior also made her feel uncomfortable because he would openly watch porn when she was around and her parents weren't, and she also caught him spying on her in her room while he was above in the attic. The weirdest thing for her was learning that he joined 2 Alcoholics Anonymous groups for teens, although she had never seen him drink. Karl was very intelligent, but his grades started to lower due to his arrest and parole. He started dating, and things were changing when it came to his sexual perversion and desires when he got his first girlfriend, Angela McMillan. Despite the bad grades he received his senior year, he was still able to graduate in 1988. He did not have much contact with his family after he graduated and moved out, but he did reach out to them to inform them that he was a suspect in a robbery, but let them know it was a case of mistaken identity. Not too soon after graduating, he joined the Army, but was disciplined on multiple occasions. He had to attend mandatory counseling sessions to address his poor performance, and his platoon sergeant said that he was a marginal and substandard soldier. Along with struggling with his performance, he struggled to get along with fellow soldiers, and he eventually got in trouble for assaulting a soldier with a knife. For this attack, he had to attend a hearing in front of his commanding officer, and he was punished by having a reduction in his rank and his pay suspended. A few months after that, he was discharged. 1 month after being discharged from the Army, Karl married his high school sweetheart, Angela McMillan, in May of 1990. Angela testified that her marriage with Karl was tumultuous from the start because he would be caring, but also lied to her on a regular basis. She felt uncomfortable that he would hide pornographic videos in magazines around the house and what he thought to be were hiding spaces. He frequently tried to convince her to have unconventional sex, and when she refused, he would get black electrical tape to tie her up and then have sex with her. While living together, Karl and Angela agreed to help out another couple and allow them to stay with them for a while. The female in the relationship was Sunny Mars, and she later testified that Karl would frequently proposition her for sex and acts sad, expressing that he wished he experimented with other women before marrying so young. On one occasion, after she denied him, he grabbed her, but he was interrupted when his wife called him on the phone. During this time, Karl was working as a salesman for a telemarketing firm, and when he wasn't harassing women close to him, he began to pick random numbers he had available to him and would make obscene phone calls to women. 2 women in particular who worked in Pennsylvania kept receiving calls, so they reported the calls to the police. After tracing the calls, they found out they were coming from Karl's place of work. The supervisor informed investigators that only a few salesmen were assigned the geographical region that was being contacted, so he went in the computer system and found out that it was Karl's specific extension that was being used to make the calls. After being confronted, Karl denied the accusations, but now knowing he was caught, stopped making obscene phone calls from his work phone. Now, with a rocky marriage and his female roommate no longer in the picture, Karl set his eyes on his downstairs neighbor, Felicia Pretchel. Felicia had been living in the apartment complex for 17 years and was a single mother of a 5-year-old son named Shad. Karl later claimed that the two had consensual sex before, but on August 2, 1991, things took a turn for the worse. On this particular day, Felicia made it home from work at around 5:30 p.m. and asked her brother Daniel if he could babysit her son Shad while she went out with her friends. Daniel agreed and made it to Felicia's house at around 6 o'clock with his girlfriend. He got Shad, and the 3 of them left a little after 6 to go to the store and to rent movies. Daniel later went on record and said that when they left, Felicia was dressed in cowboy boots, blue jeans, and a sweater. Karl noticed the 3 leaving and knew Felicia was home alone, so once they drove off, he walked downstairs, knocked on Felicia's door, and asked if he could borrow a cup of sugar. Despite Daniel attesting that Felicia was fully clothed, Karl said that Felicia answered the door with only a top on, which made him feel like she wanted something, but he still took the sugar and left. He returned a short time after, and this time forced his way inside. Karl said they had consensual anal sex, and she supposedly told him she would tell his wife of their affair, so he got angry and shot her. According to evidence, Karl returned with a rifle and duct tape and then proceeded to tape her hands and ankles together. He then raped her, leaving his fluids behind, and forced her to the bathroom where he shot her in the head from approximately 3 feet away. After killing Felicia, he casually left and went to take his dogs on a walk. About 30 minutes after leaving, Daniel, his girlfriend, and Shad made it back to the apartment and noticed the bathroom door was closed and Felicia's clothes were lying on the floor in the hallway. Thinking maybe she was changing, Daniel and his girlfriend went to the couch and got on the phone to order pizza. While on the couch, Daniel noticed a roll of duct tape that hadn't been there before, so he yelled out for Felicia to hurry up so she won't be late. No response from Felicia, Daniel sent his nephew Shad to go check on his mom, and the poor innocent boy opened the bathroom door to find his mother laying there dead and shouted to his uncle that there was blood everywhere. When Daniel went to check on what was going on, he observed that the sink and bathtub were running water and Felicia's jeans were pulled down to her knees. When police arrived, they interviewed tenants close by and they were able to speak with Angela and Karl, who had just returned on a walk with his dogs. Karl told police that he was drinking all day and had been intoxicated and hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary. When his wife Angela was questioned, she said that her husband never drank enough to get drunk and would occasionally have a glass or 2 of wine but never go overboard. These conflicting stories went nowhere, and Karl was not considered a suspect. DNA samples were taken from the rape kit, and partial fingerprints were taken from the roll of duct tape, but no matches turned up in the system. Years had gone by, so the Dallas Police Department transferred the case to the Cold Case Squad. In those 5 years, Karl's wife filed for divorce, and he was seeking therapy. His therapist later testified that he admitted to committing a crime and appeared to be extremely remorseful in sessions. Karl was also still attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and had opened up with a group one night that he was sorry for his past and he regretted hurting someone. He was never detailed with what type of crime he committed, but he was consoled and many told him that everything would be okay. In 1996, the Dallas Police Department reopened the case and decided to resubmit the partial fingerprints from the crime scene, and amongst some of the matches was Karl Chamberlain, who they saw they had interviewed and lived above Felicia. On July 17, 1996, Karl was arrested and interviewed by Detective Kenneth Penrod. Karl confessed and gave a written statement of everything that happened. He let the detective know he stashed the weapon at his father's house and also agreed to submit a blood sample to match DNA. The trial began in May of 1997, and he was ultimately found guilty of murder and was sentenced to death by method of lethal injection. With Karl's automatic appeals, he tried to argue that the picture shown of his victim was too graphic, and it persuaded the jury to give him the harshest sentence. They concluded the photographs were admissible. Karl also tried to say that there was a Batson violation, which meant that he felt there was a jury member that was excluded because of their race, ethnicity, or sex, and it could have helped him with his sentence. This juror was white, and he felt that he should have had more white jury members. The court concluded that there was no Batson violation, and no juror was let go based off of their race, ethnicity, or sex. There were no grounds for a retrial, and his initial sentence stood. While on death row, although having no access to internet, Karl had a website requesting for pen pals and showcasing his poems. He acquired many girlfriends, and one woman by the name of Viv Mason took out a $3,500 loan to take a trip from Australia to America to see Karl on his last day on Earth. She wasn't able to witness his actual execution because she did not fill out the right paperwork in time, but was able to spend over an hour with him. She had been sending letters to Karl for over 2 years and had even brought up marriage. On the day of his execution, his mother Mowena Arthur was able to wash his body down with her hands, and she became emotional because it was the first time she had touched Karl in 12 years. 6 hours after his visits were over, Karl had a last meal that consisted of a fruit and veggie platter, cheese, lunch meat, 6 fried cheese-filled jalapenos, deviled eggs, a chef's salad with ranch, fried onion rings, French fries, a cheeseburger, barbecue pork rolls, an omelet, milk, 2 fried chicken breasts, and orange juice. It was June 11, 2008, at the Walls Unit Prison in Huntsville, Texas, where Karl was strapped in for his execution. In attendance of the execution on his side was his sister Liberty Chamberlain and 8 pen pals from around the world, which included a girlfriend. His mother Mowena stayed outside of the prison protesting, saying that they were murdering her son. In attendance of the execution on the victim's side was Felicia's brother Michael, her son Shad, and her parents Milo and Ina Pretchel. The warden asked Karl if he had any last words, and he took that moment to smile at the victim's family through the glass window, and he told them that he loved them and said he was sorry multiple times. He then thanked them for coming to watch him die and said, "We are here to honor the life of the victim, a woman I didn't know, and to celebrate my death. I wish I could die more than once to tell you how sorry I am." The drugs were released and Karl spoke up again. Don't hate anybody because... He became unconscious and was not able to finish his sentence. 9 minutes after the drugs were administered, he was pronounced dead. His body was cremated after his death, and a Danish artist by the name of Martin Larsen was touched by Karl's last words and thought they had a lot of religious significance. He used Karl's ashes and made an hourglass. The art piece was displayed in a church, and Martin said that the length of time it took for the ashes to run out was the length of time it took to forgive. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Death Row Executions, and now for discussion and question time. In a quote from Martin Larsen, he said, "You often hear relatives of victims say after an execution that the person executed will end in hell, or that he is a monster or a beast. But the death penalty is designed to be closure for the relatives and the rest of society. When does forgiveness come?" What do you guys think about this quote? I would also like to bring up my last video on Leon Czolgosz, and we know that his body was disintegrated because prison officials did not want any remnants of his body to be put on display. What do you guys feel about these death row inmates' bodies, art, or words carrying on for years after their death? Do you agree that it should be used for art and be put out for display or used for monetary gain? I mentioned in the story that throughout high school and living with his father and stepmother, he was always stealing, lying, and faking tears to make someone think he was remorseful. I often don't care too much for people's tears if they do the same thing continuously to hurt someone. How much weight can you put on an apology when no effort is made to change those behaviors? I think some of these people are master manipulators and can fake cries just to get people to be on their side, even if it's their last seconds on earth. This brings me to another thought. No one ever saw Karl get drunk. but yet he was still joining Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Do you think that he was doing this to get people to feel sorry for him? Also, it makes me question believing someone who doesn't give you the full story. He had so many people in those meetings feeling sorry for him and telling him that everything would be okay, but little did they know this little crime he said he was sorry for was killing someone. Lastly, in his last words, Karl mentioned that he did not know Felicia, but in court he said that he had multiple sexual encounters with her and they were personable enough for him to ask for sugar. He unknowingly caught himself in a lie there. Before I leave, I would like to give a shout out to Sarah and Victoria. Thank you guys for becoming patrons on my Patreon. I appreciate your support. Have a good day, everyone.